Hi there, I'm Richard Hill, the host of eCom 1, and welcome to episode 165. Absolute cracker for you, this one. Sam Jackson, Associate Partner Growth Manager at BigCommerce. Now, Sam's somebody I've known for getting on for a couple of years, an absolute wealth of knowledge when it comes to platforms and replatforming and the different platform sort of requirements depending on where you are in your growth journey as an eCom store. Now, it could be quite challenging whether you're moving from 10 orders to 1,000 orders a day and everything in between. You know, when is the right time to replatform, the sort of things that you need to consider around shipping abroad, globalisation, tax, delivery, etc., etc. A lot of things to think about. And we talk a lot about feeds as well. That's another thing that, you know, when you're picking a platform and also a feed technology partner, the things that you need to consider when you're trying to push thousands of SKUs around the world on different marketplaces and different platforms. There's so much more in this episode, an absolute cracker. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening to this podcast. Now, let's head over to this fantastic episode. Well, welcome to the eCom 1 podcast. Sam, how you doing?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm looking forward to this one. Now, Sam is somebody that's been to see us a few times from BigCommerce, so I'm really looking forward to stepping through a lot of things today. But I think before we do that, it'll be great for you to step through your journey, how you got into e-commerce and how you got the role at BigCommerce.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think I started off weirdly in recruitment of all places, and I was in life sciences recruitment straight out of university. It was the first job that I got. I got the job before I finished university because I was just desperate to get into work, and I wanted to be around people as much as possible. Went through it, realised recruitment maybe wasn't for me in certain scenarios, and moved into SDRing, so sales development for a PPC software company, which was a little bit of a flirtation into e-commerce, a wider element. Then went from that during COVID into another role with a search and merch company that was based out of Austria, and started working with them. And that's how I kind of really fell into e-commerce properly and started understanding that there was more to life than just pure direct sales as well. And that's where the partnerships element came into it as well. And then naturally from that, I was at Shop Talk with the partner manager from BigCommerce at the time. He said, "Oh yeah, we're hiring. We saw that you might be interested," all of that kind of. I was like, "Oh yeah, of course." Next thing you know, I was going through the interview process and started off with BigCommerce, a year and a half ago, basically, and have loved it from the moment that I joined to this moment right now so far. It's such an amazing company to be a part of, such a wide variety of things that you can do, and you can work with amazing partners like you guys and various other ones as well.
Other partners are available.
Yeah, other partners are available upon request.
Well, thanks for that. I think it's always nice to sort of step through that journey. Obviously, recruitment, you see a lot of things, don't you, in recruitment, and sort of deal with quite an intense environment normally in recruitment, which I think is good training ground for obviously building relationships ultimately, which is quite often pretty much the focus of a partner role. Yeah. So obviously you've been at BigCom for coming up to 18 months, I believe.
Yeah, give or take.
So, you know, if I say to you, you know, what are you intending to achieve in your tenure there? Well, what would you say to that?
It's a good question. I think that I came into the role new to partnerships and not really realising kind of the level of communication and the level of openness of the community that partnerships can entail. I think I work across all of our UK partners now from a growth perspective of making them work a little bit closer with BigCommerce, making us part of the conversation and first in line for various different things, but then also working a lot more with our European partners as well and understanding kind of what have people in the Netherlands done that people have done in the UK slightly differently and vice versa as well. The same applies to the Nordics as well, where BigCommerce in both of those regions is growing at crazy rates and working with some really exciting big partners, but also some really exciting new partners as well. So I think the goal from my perspective, and it applies to a lot of us in the partnerships team at BigCommerce, is just working with all of these partners and creating a real exciting community that they want to be a part of. And it doesn't feel like every single partner is competing with one another all of the time. It feels like we have partners that are in deals together that if one of them wins and one of them loses, they'll maybe connect and talk a little bit about that. And I think that's a bit of partnerships that people don't really kind of go into as much, and realize that we're all doing the same thing at the end of the day. We don't need to compete with everyone all of the time. And I think my goal within the work that I'm doing at the moment is really ensuring that all of our partners are collaborative as much as possible. They feel like they're part of a community as well. I think that's something that platforms across the board have done well and done not so well in the past, and it's something that we want to ensure that everyone's getting access to.
Yeah, obviously we were at your partner event probably 2 months ago, and I think you had circa 800-ish people in the room. We were obviously meeting people from all around the world, or particularly Europe, partner-wise. And I think that partner piece quite often gets missed, doesn't it? When quite often people can be quite sort of narrow-minded, let's be fair, around, oh no, we're not working with them and we're not going to. But the guys that we see doing really, really well, in the sort of market, are the ones that are very open-minded, that are having different conversations. And the reality is, not every potential partner, if we're talking about a development partner, for example, can do what the next one can do, or they've got a very specific specialism. They've got a lot of insights into the marketing side more, but then they also have a big development side that might be useful if you're big on PPC, or if you're really looking to push the B2B side, or the internationalization side. Different partners can complement each other, rather than, oh no, we can do it all that, but really maybe you can't do all that as a potential tech partner, or as a potential eCom developer. So I think what I think is very nice about your ecosphere, the people that we've met, just the real openness. Obviously we work with a lot of your different partners, and we have a lot of conversations and a lot of, I guess, nights out as well with you guys, where we meet a lot of different people. But I think that partner bit, that networking thing, side of things, I think a lot of businesses miss.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's there's 2 points on that I think really resonate, in that one of the first things that I speak to partners about is, I don't want you to just do BigCommerce or just do other tech providers. Actually, I think you as a partner is more respected when you've got a slightly wide, and not too wide. Like you say, you can't do everything. No one can do everything. But if you're working with a couple of platforms, and it allows you as a partner from a system integrator perspective, for example, if you're doing the development, it gives you that opportunity to say, we work with these platforms. We think personally this is probably going to be the best fit for you, but here's our unbiased view. And they're the most successful partners in our ecosystem.
Give them the menu sort of thing, and your insight into the, this main course. Maybe you'll like this if you're doing if you're thinking of doing B2B further down the line, or internationalization. If you've got more than X amount of countries, then you might want to try this starter and speak to these people and let them know what's available.
100%.
Yeah, this is very much how we work. Where we obviously, the majority of the clients that we work with and are approached by, ultimately there's 9 times out of 10 a conversation about replatforming along the way, depending on sort of what tier they're at or plateau they're about to hit and on their growth journey. Now, there's an array really of development companies that we would recommend. Obviously, we put them in contact with the likes of yourself, etc., to then make those decisions as well. But yeah, brilliant. So, trends. So obviously you just come back from the Nordics a couple of weeks ago, or this last week. Obviously last time we had a good conversation, I know you had a lot of travel going on, going to various, skipping around Europe. But what are the sort of, would you say, if you were to distill the sort of top couple of trends right now that you're seeing that are doing well for merchants?
I think the interesting thing about it that I didn't realize when I was starting to spend a bit more time in the Netherlands, in the Nordics, that kind of thing, is that the trends across Europe are very similar across the board. Obviously, we can't go through a podcast, we can't go through anything without talking about some kind of AI. Everyone's talking about it. It's completely fair. The thing I like about it that not really enough people are talking about from a trend perspective is that AI is now, people forget that it's not just come about in the last 6 months. Even though with ChatGPT, with other things like that, it's appeared. But AI has been around for years and years and years. What people are realizing now is that there are technologies out there, there are people out there, there are various different things that said they did AI when they didn't really do it in the past. Now there's a lot more scrutiny into what it's going to support for us. And I think that's a big trend and a positive from all the conversation and through all the, to be honest, noise of it, because not all of it is proper and worthwhile to a lot of merchants, but merchants are really taking more decision making into it and looking into it in more detail and taking it seriously. I think the other element of that comes onto the end of it is that just in general, where we are at the moment, everyone is spending time taking decisions and really understanding what is right for their business, which I think a salesperson might say that that's not a good thing because they want to close business and all of that kind of stuff. But I actually really like it. I think it showcases that we've got a lot more merchants, if they're in the market for some SEO work, if they're in the market for a replatform conversation, they're not just having a look around for the sake of looking around anymore. Budgets are tight. They want to ensure that they're getting the best out of their money that they're investing into these kinds of things because it's a lot of money. And they're taking so much more time to assess that than what they were 5 years ago, for example. And I think that's actually a benefit because it means more serious buyers in the market and it means more serious implementations moving forward that people can really, really get into as well. So that's a real nice thing from a trend perspective in terms of just the decision making of everything. People are taking everything a lot more seriously, especially in the times that we're in, which is really good. And then I think the final point on that, just from a general perspective, is that comes into their digital marketing. People are really making sure that they're doing the right things at the right time, whether it's their feed management, whether it's anything from an advertising perspective. There's so much regulation around it now, for example, from a Google perspective of them changing what you need to do every 5 minutes that pushes it around the corner to help support and get in the right direction. But then people are, again, spending more time. They're employing agencies for the right reasons, which is really exciting. And I think the trends are positive as much as what we hear around that might suggest it otherwise, really.
No, I agree. I think we're, like in terms of you, when you're saying about people taking their time, 100% we're seeing the same, but it's a more serious conversation. It's a more thought out. It's not just a flippant, all right, we need to replatform. Oh, yeah, but hang on a minute. Have you really had deeper conversations around, you know, the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years and speaking to a few different providers as well? I think is always good, even when people come to us and approach us, you know, sort of, you know, this is us, but, you know, feel free to, go to the market and see what's what, you know, and I think like speaking to the people you're going to be dealing with on a day-to-day basis, I think quite often, you know, when you're having these conversations about, you know, if we're talking about replatforming or, you know, you're going to speak to the sales guy, you know, it's inevitable, you know, someone's got to do the sales at every business. That's, you know, that's how the world keeps spinning sort of thing in business, you know, that things have to be sold. But ultimately, when the sales are done and the X amount of percent deposit's been transferred, you know, you've got to work with a team of, you know, whether it's developers, whether it's feed managers, whether it's account managers. So meeting that team, I think, is really key. But that takes time. It can take time, can't it? Especially, you know, when we're talking about sort of internationalization and meeting people, you know, it can take a bit more time. But the AI side, you know, we can't really not do an episode at the moment, I don't think, without mentioning AI. But specifically with BigCommerce then, is there maybe a couple of features that are out already that are lesser known around the AI side?
Yeah, so we've done a couple of things. I think the caveat from a BigCommerce perspective is that we don't want to lead and push merchants down to use AI, in my opinion, for the sake of using it. There are a couple of quick wins that are really successful for some of our merchants. One of the things that we've announced just this week is product descriptions. So somebody can download an app in the BigCommerce control panel now. There's a prompt element that you can put in, and this is all based on Google's AI framework, where they can put a couple of prompts in, and that will generate a product description for the product that they want to generate, and then they can bulk do all of those kinds of artificial intelligence product recommendations and descriptions on that kind of thing. The other element that we're hoping to do kind of more towards the end of the year is kind of in and around those recommendations side of things. But I think what we'll lean on very much is the partner ecosystem from a BigCommerce perspective in the tech partnerships in terms of they're the ones that are doing AI. We want those kinds of exciting firms to come in and have something that's going to have a benefit to plug into the platform and allow us to be our e-commerce platform. We're an e-commerce platform. We're not going to do AI. We're not going to do pay. I think if we can maintain the core and give the opportunity through the openness that we're trying to bring, that's the core of any kind of new product that we try and do at BigCommerce. It's to elevate and maximize the openness and the SaaS element of our business. That's the areas I think that will allow third parties to be able to come in and properly vetted, really push that story on it, which is exciting.
Exciting times, isn't it? I think exactly. Just mentioned in product descriptions, for example, I would say a typical listener's got, thousands of SKUs to sit there manually changing those. It's a very common but basic requirement of any e-com store, really. But to be able to use the AI that's inbuilt, but obviously then step forward a few months when there's different tech partners that are the AI specialists to really, if you like, in its simplest form, crank up those prompts even more and more and more by grabbing data from different sources, different APIs. It's very exciting, something we're exploring quite heavily, or very heavily, should I say.
Nice.
Because ultimately, we're probably managing, 50 million SKUs as a company somewhere in that region. To sit there and ask somebody to manually write description, which we do have people that do that. Less so now because we're using AI. But yeah, it's very exciting, very exciting. That was sort of one of the, I saw that demoed at the partner conference a couple of months ago. It's very exciting. I know a lot of the platforms are obviously, as they should be, looking at the AI side. But let's just jump back to replatforming. I think that's sort of on most store owners and marketeers' list of, but it can vary on the timeline when they're going to do it. But when somebody's listening now and they're thinking, we need to be thinking about replatforming, what would you say to them? When is usually sort of a certain threshold or timeline or plateau, or that they should be thinking about replatforming? And then when they are ready and hitting that sort of timeline, why should they think about using BigCom?
Yeah, good question. I get my sales pitch idea ready at the end of it. I think the weird thing that I will say at the start is that I don't think that there is a perfect time to replatform your business, because it is a stressful thing to do, and it is sometimes an expensive thing to do. But I think there are signs with what you're doing at the moment, or what you're looking to do in the future, that make you question that probably is better suited for you in another area. Perfect example of it is a business that started off doing maybe half of what they're now doing online, for example, in terms of, we needed to get a site up and running because we were putting through some online orders, but now we're an actual online business. There's so many of those kinds of firms out there. So common. And they're the elements of when you're starting to do things like we were just talking about, right? In terms of manually putting your product descriptions into, or even manually adding products into whatever you've got going on at the moment. They're the kind of identifiers from a growth perspective that I think should I be utilizing an agency to support me in looking for another platform that maybe caters to those growth needs? And then also actually going through that replatforming process. And I think it's looking to think about what's going to be the least short-term drops in terms of going through that process, because it's going to be on average a 3 to 6 month process to do that replatforming conversation if you're a decent sized business. What's going to set me up for the next 5 to 10 years of my e-commerce journey? And that's the kind of, I think, framework and mindset firms should be thinking about when they're even considering the idea of thinking that whatever they're using at the moment isn't quite right for them.
But that can inherently be quite challenging, because you don't know what you don't know as the merchant. I think you may be thinking a year ahead. Well, we're doing, we started doing 1 order a day. Now we're doing 100 orders a day. But how are we going to get to? They might be thinking 200 orders a day, but the reality is, things can just go 10,000 orders a day. I mean, that's an extreme example, but 10,000 orders a month, is obviously very common. So it's like then having those right conversations with a partner network or a development agency to sort of get that out of the merchant about their aspirations, their plans, and they go, well, actually, didn't realise that we could do click, and we're in 50 countries. And it's not quite that simple, but
perfect example, so true. And I think that's the big thing that I would always really recommend to a merchant when they're even considering it, of just getting some external advice, whether it's people that in the industry that have gone through those kinds of things, that have done replatforms, that have done aggressive growth. what's the goals for your business, like you say, in the next couple of years, but what do you feel like is going to be the things that come up? We can't predict the future, but we can have focuses like, are you going to open up more brands within your business? So you're going to need more than one storefront, for example.
Yeah.
Leads quite nicely into the pitch in a moment. It's those things like, how much are you selling online? Where are you selling? Are you selling marketplaces? Do you need offline and buy now, pick up in store elements? Those kinds of stuff. I think being able to utilize a platform like BigCommerce to be able to seamlessly integrate those kinds of things, and just we're going into the idea of ensuring that enterprise e-commerce is simplified for as many merchants as possible in all kinds of spaces. We've always said that we've got the facilities and the ability to support a merchant on any stage of their e-commerce growth. And I think to come into the point of why BigCommerce, it's very much the case of, if you want to grow your business, if you need something that is easy to use on a back end, but also can do some really exciting and impactful things to your online business and connect the dots between loads of different things through something like Feedonomics, but through something like the buy now, pick up in store features that we've got. We've got the buy with Prime elements that you could bring into your business. All of that can be easy controllable through the back end that is good for the day-to-day users of the business. But if someone wanted to go really complicated from those side of things and go really open, go into, say, a composable framework that we can go into, we can support those kinds of merchants as well. So I think the idea of BigCommerce is that we're not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution for everyone, but what we will be is a solution that people feel like they can tailor to the key areas of the business that they want to work with. And I think that's the key element of when you're considering BigCommerce, when you're starting to look at that replatforming conversation, is what else do I want to bring in from an online experience perspective to support this and have BigCommerce at the center of it? Do I need a customer experience engagement kind of solution? Do I need merchandising? Do I need all of this to come in? That's something that I think we can sit as the center of being able to facilitate and support around. That is key reasons as to why merchants tend to choose us over when we're talking with other brands, or when we're upscaling, or even when they want to build something custom, for example.
I think you can see we're stepping through all the different things to be thinking about why, you say 3 to 6 months and companies are maybe taking a bit longer than the norm. When you start thinking about, how many stores might we have, or will we still have stores? Will we tone down the store focus? We're spending, £1 million on each store that we're launching, but, £1 million on a website, actually, it's maybe foreign to some people, but it's very normal in the conversations that fairly normal in the conversations that you'll be having. And, are we going to go into France? Hang on a minute. It's a big world out there. That's one country. Well, what tech can the right tech go into, the 40 countries that we've now got on that list? But to then have those conversations internally will take time as a company, but then to have those conversations with, 1, 2, 3 potential development partners, and then you start looking at the feed technology. We're on Amazon. Oh, but there is obviously Google Merchant Center. There's all these. Oh, in America, there's Target. There's this. Oh, hang on a minute. We've now took our 50 SKUs to 20 other marketplaces. 50,000 SKUs. Sorry, and now we've got 1 million. 20 times 50,000. We've got 1 million products out there on 20 other. And then so it's some big decisions to make, isn't there? But obviously, some of those decisions, it's just understanding what the tech can do. You might not do it all now, but you want to know that there's capability there to be able to list on XYZ in XYZ country that you're not in now, but in 8 months, 12 months, 24 months, you want to be in that.
Yeah, that's such a good point in the sense of there's so much opportunity. And I think it comes back to what we were saying a minute ago of do your research. If you're serious about this, and that's what firms are doing a lot more, and that's what the most successful firms are doing, they are heavily researching into the areas that they potentially want to go into a business. It's also okay to say, that's probably too much for us right now. Let's maybe hold back on that. Let's spend some time developing something in the UK to really take things to a real high level, and then maybe consider adding one of those 10 things that we've talked about that's an exciting thing that you can do as a business. Like, it's very much a case of one business need and desires is going to be completely different to another business, and utilizing the research that you've got internally of just what's right for you, but then also supporting that with external networking, with talking to a couple of agencies. If you get to the end of that discussion and it's maybe not quite right, like, I don't think people should feel forced into doing it for the sake of doing it because they think it might work out. Like, it's something that is okay to be, we'll stick with what we've got for now and see how it goes kind of thing. Like, that's why it's such a, the point comes back to, there's never a right time to do it. There's always going to be that leap of faith moment. It's just making sure that the leap isn't as big as what it would be if you were totally unprepared for it.
I think the point about, chatting to people that have been there, done it, or, are in that process or so far down that implementation, when what I would do is look at the sort of firms, you've only got in your example, BigCommerce, go to your sort of news section, your page, and sort of look at some of the, the Diamonds Direct, BMWs, sort of retail side, MKM, I think.
MKM wasn't supplied.
But obviously those firms will be at the different industry events, the people that are responsible for those, those transitions from wherever they were to BigCommerce, and and have conversation. If that's an industry you're in and you're listening to this, you're in those industries, but ultimately your industry will have, as every industry does, people that are doing 5 times what you're doing as an industry. It doesn't matter who you are, there's always somebody out there doing a bit more, which is great. You get some ideas from those guys, but obviously if they've then gone with a certain platform, i.e. BigCommerce, you could get a feel by chatting to those and get, as we say a lot, and we really sort of push a lot of our listeners to get out there to these conferences, to these industry events, meet people that are, just a chance conversation. Oh yeah, we've moved platform with XYZ. It was a bloody nightmare. Oh, okay, what was that about? And then, it was really good. We thought this through. We dealt with, because there's a lot of, it's a minefield, isn't it? I think that's the scary bit. We've got a client that springs to mind that, they're doing about 30 million a year, and they're looking to re-platform, and it's a big thing for them. It's obviously a big, it's, big revenue for them. But it's not a decision. I think the decision is going to be about 12 months plus in the making, and it's a lot to consider. They've got very specific focuses, but again, I know that they're looking at, what can be the 1, 3, 5 year plan with different areas and different countries specifically. So getting out there and events, but let's step into globalisation. I think, obviously you touched on that there as that sort of shopping list of potential requirements on a platform, but I think, a lot of people think, we'll just turn some ads on in the US, and the US is a lot bigger than, let's say, the UK. We're going to 50x the business. Well, the reality of life
easy peasy.
It's not quite like that, is there? So in terms of maybe the top 3 things that our listeners should be thinking about around globalization and globalizing their e-commerce business, if they're maybe just in 1 or 2 countries at the moment.
Good question. I think the key thing that comes back to basically the same kind of philosophy when you're looking at replatforming, when you're looking at anything, is, my goodness, do your research. Is your product, is the service that you're offering relatable in the region that you're looking to go into? What's the competition like? It's very basic things to say that everyone's thinking about, but there's so much opportunity, especially through, for example, if they were working with BigCommerce at the time and they were looking to move into and open a couple of additional storefronts, like, we have great networks over there that we can introduce to similar kind of brands or similar agencies that have real good niches, especially across America. A lot of our agencies in America are particularly focused on the specific industry that they're working in, which is really, really good to have, to be able to look into in a little bit more. I think that's like a massive impact on it. But also, what's the reason that you want to go into those kinds of markets? Is it just like you say, well, we can make a bit more revenue if we just turn on some ads in America? Or are you looking to actually expand into that area? Are you looking to open fulfillment? Are you actually looking to maybe do some stores if you've got that kind of stuff? I think that element of it is something that the reason behind has to drive the decision, in the sense of, this is a business decision of us looking long term, but trying to gain a global presence, as opposed to just trying to maybe make an extra few bucks over somewhere else as opposed to the place that you're looking for. I think the key thing that comes into that from an online perspective as a kind of third point is the system that you're using right now the same system that you can use and replicate in America, in France, in Germany? there are different fulfillment and tax regulations, for example, across various different EU areas, especially also in America, where you can have a different tax code on the same street, for example. Have you got those kind of processes set up so that when you do decide to go live in one of those regions, your e-commerce system in general, not just your BigCommerce side of things, but also your tax, as I mentioned, your logistics, that is so important to get right straight away. And I think that is an element where BigCommerce, from our perspective, we've got a lot of globalized applications that can replicate that experience. But it's always going to be ever so slightly different into the areas that you're going into. And I think that consideration of you can't really just pick up what you've got in one area and replicate it in another. It has to be personalized and translated, even, for example, in certain situations through the multi-storefront setup that you can implement from the various platforms that you're working with. That's the area I think that is the biggest thing that people miss when they decide to just do another platform or do another location in their business. It's not a copy and paste situation.
I think that
get it right in the area that you want to go into.
Key things, isn't there, with each geographical location? So maybe just step through them. So we've got the delivery and the customs.
Delivery, custom,
and I think quite often, they think, as you say, they can just launch a site. You've got the SEO element, which is absolutely key. We'll just use the same, URL structure and the same domain. So how are you going to structure that? And I know BigCommerce does that very well. And then the logistics, as we sort of touched on there, but you're going to have a fulfillment in that country. You've probably got to get to a certain level before you do that, or that's a certain level of investment, isn't it?
Germany's a great example from a logistics perspective of pretty much making sure that you need something in and around on the ground in Germany, because that's how you want to do things from that perspective. Then, as we were saying a second ago, tax is such an important element from that side of things, especially if you're going into the US. You need a tax provider that is higher level than what your standard. BigCommerce has strong tax capabilities, so do the other platforms, but using something like an Avalara to really kind of take that in and support you in automating those kinds of procedures. The same street in the US might have different tax codes and charges from that side of things. It's unbelievable.
And then that leads us into feed management. So you've got feeds, obviously, in your core country, but then when you think about launching into 1, 2, 10, 20 countries, having the fact that your feed will work and be approved in the various countries. I just wanted to introduce you very quickly to our sponsors, Pricing. Now, Pricing is a competitive price tracking and monitoring software that can dynamically change a product's prices on all sales channels. They work with brands such as Samsung, Sony, Suzuki to increase their online revenue. Now, if you run Google Shopping, which I know a lot of you absolutely do, this software is absolutely key to accelerating profits. One of the reasons I recommend Pricing to my clients is because you can find out your competitors' pricing and stock availability all in one simple to understand dashboard, giving you a huge competitive advantage. Now, if you have any inquiries and questions about this software, or you're ready to get cracking, we have worked out a very, very special deal for our listeners where you can get a free month's trial and then 25% off for the first 3 months. Head to ecom1.com pricing and complete the inquiry form, and we will connect our listeners to the Pricing team. Right, let's head straight back to the episode. So, with potentially going into multiple new countries and multiple new markets, we must talk about feeds, and obviously not your personal acquisition of Feedonomics, but BigCommerce's Feedonomics acquisition. It seems like not that long ago, but it's actually a couple of years now, isn't it? Coming into.
Yeah, I think it was kind of the start of 2020. I think in and around the last couple of years, obviously they all merge into one for all of us, don't they? But it feels like the Feedonomics has very much been a part of BigCommerce for a long time, but all of a sudden straight away as well.
And feeds is something, here at our agency and our sort of most of our team, I would say, has been our sort of big lever for us, in getting a big advantage in most industries, because I think a lot of people look at their feed, the feed's working, and then they're just focused on the feeds now. I think, are more important than ever. What would you say to merchants that are sort of maybe dabbling with their feed, but they're not really focusing on it?
I think it's a great question, because you had Caitlin from Feedonomics on a couple of weeks or months ago, who touched on this in a little bit of an American viewpoint of it, but there's also an element of things that it's just, you can dabble in those kinds of things, but realistically, are you going to get the return on ad spend that you really need if you're just going to do it half-heartedly? Are you going to go full in with those kinds of stuff, or are you going to kind of just keep it managing? And I think there's such an amazing opportunity now, especially with the idea of social commerce coming into a lot of things. That is the opportunity that people just can't miss out on at the moment in terms of looking at the current, but also looking at the future. And I think utilizing a feed management platform like Feedonomics to help you do it properly, but not give you kind of as much time on it as well, is super, super vital. I think we looked at some stats a couple of weeks ago on the Feedonomics benefits, and for an agency, so also for a merchant, if they were going to handle their feeds themselves, typically when agencies were working with prior to Feedonomics, they were spending about 50 hours a month on feed management.
Yeah.
Working with Feedonomics, they cut it down to 40 hours. So they save themselves 10 hours a month, which they could be doing optimizing campaigns in other areas, adding more products in, getting a bit more creative elements on that side. That's a merchant and an agency thing that could be really utilized. And I think that understanding that you can have a platform that is a managed service like Feedonomics that you can send your feed data to and push it out to Google, Amazon, Meta, TikTok as well, which is obviously coming into things a lot more as from that side. That's the opportunity.
And in multiple countries.
In multiple countries. And people don't realize, I think, that you can go into somewhere and you've got your feed, it says that you're wearing a white trainer in size 8. You send that data to Google from your, if it's a Ted Baker, for example, Ted Baker don't need to put that it's a Ted Baker shoe on their website. They don't need to do that. It's Ted Baker. Google doesn't know that. Facebook doesn't know that. TikTok doesn't. So you have to go into each one and slightly change depending on which one it is.
Add the word Ted Baker.
Add the word Ted Baker, but then Facebook want it in a slightly different format to what Google want it, because it wouldn't be fun if it wasn't difficult. And that's the kind of thing that takes the time.
Yeah.
And I think everyone forgets about that. And if you want to spend time really propelling your business into these areas, using something like Feedonomics when you've got large SKU counts, when you're going to spend a lot of money doing it, is for me a no-brainer in being able to push it into the various platforms. But like you say, various countries, in Spanish it might come across slightly different to what it will come across in French, so the feed has to be set up in the right way for the various different languages as well.
I think it's still so surprising that, we talked about AI 20 minutes ago, but AI and PPC, everyone is using really AI driven campaigns.
Yeah.
So how are you going to get an advantage? If you're going, there's 2 of you selling Ted Baker, we're talking about shoes, 2 of you selling Ted Baker shoes, you both running, PMAX type campaigns as just an example. So where you get a big advantage is a few things, but obviously in the feed, if your feed is then completely, absolutely everything is filled in as it should, you're using product types, the right categories, you've got custom labels that have got, price break. There's obviously all different things around margin, profitability, end of line, trying to clear stock out of the warehouse and different other custom labels. If you're doing things like that and maybe working on profit-focused campaigns, the advantage you're going to get, it's a big thing for us. We're obsessed with it. We've got a whole team. But for the guys that are listening that want to potentially have an audit on their feeds, I know we work with you guys on the Feedonomics side, and we can get a feed audit done.
Yeah.
So feel free to reach out to us, and we'll link that up in the show notes as well, so you can get a feed audit via Feedonomics and some of our team as well.
And I think a big point of that to point out is that it's something that can be actioned yourself. It's not something that, I think a lot of people hear free audit and they think, we're going to try and sell you something at the end of it. Not at all. We want to ensure that the actions that the feed audit provides, yes, it's going to be easier to do that through Feedonomics because it's something that we do, but it is something that someone can take away and really look at their business and support. So it's a conversation starter, and it helps with the benefits. But yeah, there's that element to it, I think, to consider.
I think I'd maybe set a challenge to the guys that are listening now. Have a look at your feed, and you think, well, some of you will be more savvy than others in terms of looking at it, but you can look at it in your merchant center and see the different variables. And those variables were made up of categories, product descriptions, price, things like that. But I would go and have a look and see what is known as custom labels. because you've got various custom labels. And I would say at least 50% of you listening right now won't have many or any custom labels. Well, those custom labels are there to give you an advantage, to tell Google to drive the bidding or to categorize things in a certain way and bid on things in a certain way based on whether that's profit, based on whether it's low margin, high margin, and directing it with these custom labels. But if those custom labels aren't there and your other competitor has got the custom labels, they're going to be paying less than you for clicks potentially or for conversions. It's going to be a smarter bidding algorithm because it's got a better input than your input. So go and have a look at those custom labels, have a look at that. But obviously we can also work well with you guys to do an audit as well. And then obviously you can do what you will with that. We can obviously have a further conversation, or you can crack on and have a look at it yourself. But so I think B2B, obviously we were at it's huge for a lot of companies, and I think when it comes to sort of B2B commerce, it's got some different nuances, hasn't it? Different things, whether that's around having purchase orders, having different pricing structures. For the guys that are maybe looking at that as an opportunity now, and they maybe don't do B2B now, because it's quite often it's the other way around. They do B2B and then they go to D2C sort of thing. But for the guys that are looking at layering in and adding in B2B, what would you say to those guys?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two ways that historically people have done B2B when they're going online, right? They're purely selling B2B and they just need an order form that people log into. Yeah. And then they've got that B2C element already that they need to add it in. Is exactly what you say. And I think historically, up until the last maybe 2-3 years, people didn't realize that merchants and the customers that they're working with actually want a B2B experience that is the same as their B2C experience online. They want things to look exciting. They want things to be easy to use. They want to be able to find the products in the right way. They don't want to just put in a product SKU or a product ID and then add to cart. It needs to be engaging. One of the biggest things, we did a B2B buyer report about a year ago or so, at the start of this year, I think it was. And one of the key things that we asked customers coming into B2B solutions was, what would make you continue working with this business? And one of the top answers from all of the merchants that we spoke to was, they need to have a strong UX on their website to get me to come back. It was the website ease of use and the UX, and it was what they were familiar with when they're going on their phone and they're buying from ASOS or they're buying from Nike.com, for example. The B2B user has higher demands now than they have ever had when it comes to their online experience. So you need to ensure that you're delivering that, whether you're going to add that to your business or whether you are just a pure B2B player. Like you mentioned MKM Building Supplies to earlier on, which is a huge B2B manufacturer that has gone on BigCommerce and made a significant investment in their online experience, which is paying off dividends now, but that's something that they didn't have a number of years ago. And I think the digital maturity of all of those B2B brands is a lot less than what our standard D2C customers that we've all been working with for years and years are. And they're all coming into play now over the next couple of years. So there's a huge opportunity to ensure that your site and your experience is properly up to speed, because otherwise there's a real chance that you're going to be left behind in this space. I think that's the big element and opportunity that brands can have.
I'm getting flashbacks because my sort of first foray into e-commerce was closing in on 20 years ago, and my business was a distribution, B2B, selling computer components. And then it was like, right, well, we've got a 1-off price, we've got a 5-off price, we've got a 20-off price. So that was like our first that was one of my very first businesses about online 20 years ago, and building out in the pricing structure, but obviously very archaic compared with today's, functionality. And the things, like you say, it's more about, they want an amazing, it's not just about price breaks and purchase orders. Things have moved on, haven't they, considerably. But I think as an opportunity, it's a huge opportunity that I think it does get missed on the B2B side.
Yeah. And like taking so many B2B merchants now have a really good offline experience. You've got a sales rep the company can order up and do bulk ordering for you, all of that kind of stuff. That needs to be replicated online. And I think like there's so many opportunities through really advanced price listing that you can do with BigCommerce, but also with anything else that you're building, but something that you can consider making sure that you've got customer logins, but have various different permissions for the customers that are logging in, so that a standard junior person in the company can't come in and order £1 million worth of product on the side.
Order 5, I ordered 500.
Whoops, I pressed one too many zeros there, guys. I think that's the kind of things that you can very easily set up. I think it's scary for some people that are going to have to do that digital transformation in the next couple of months or years. And they think those kinds of things happen, but they're super simple things to be able to set up and safeguard yourself so that you're delivering the online experience that offline your customers have been used to and loved from your company over however many years that you've been practicing, for example.
So we've covered a lot of ground, Sam.
Yes.
A lot of ground, a lot of sort of positive talk about investing in this and thinking about this and, giving the guys a lot to think about. So I always like to finish, Sam, with a bit of a crystal ball moment. So we're sitting here in 12 months. What advice would you give to our listeners and viewers around what they should potentially be focusing on this next 12 months? What you think is the future of e-commerce in the next 12 months?
Yeah, great question. I was thinking about this on the way here, of thinking that I'd love for us to look back in 12 months' time and say that e-commerce became really open and accessible to firms of all of those kinds of sizes, and it wasn't the scary thing that I think the C word of COVID taught us that everyone needed to get online. And I think a lot of people assumed that acceleration would continue and continue and continue. It hasn't. And I think that's probably a good thing, but it is still going to grow. And I think the goal that, especially from a BigCommerce perspective, is that we want to open up as much as possible so that the brands that want to be successful doing it is available. Obviously, we'll continue to talk about the AI side of things. I don't want to go on about that anymore because I'm sure your listeners, as much as myself, are sick of it, but it's always something that you've got to consider. And I think that it would be nice to look back in 12 months' time and see merchants that were scared about going online and scared to make the decision, take that leap of faith, and be really successful in doing it. And I think there's going to be advancements on various things of having that opportunity to connect your offline and your online experiences, because also think that people are going out a lot more and are wanting what they had from an offline perspective as much as they want the online. They want the transition to be as seamless as possible. And I think that is the thing that both merchants need to get right, brands need to get right, and also kind of the merchants that we're working with and the businesses, platforms, and that need to make sure that that connection between your offline and your online experience is the best it possibly can be.
Yeah, no, completely with you on that. So obviously, we've mentioned a couple of times, I was at the conference, part of the conference a couple of months back, and obviously I was privy to a few things that are coming down the pipeline. But if you were to share maybe a couple of things that you're allowed to share in terms of like the roadmap for BigCom in the next 12 months, what are a couple of the things that you're really excited for specifically?
I was thinking about this on the way of what I can say and what I can't say as well. And I didn't check with anyone. So, who knows? But we're making a lot of advancements in ensuring that the experience, we talked about it earlier, from a globalisation perspective, is the best that it possibly can be that a platform can provide. So we've already made huge announcements and steps in our multi-storefront capabilities. And that is something that is incredibly strong for firms that want to sell across multiple brands.
Yeah,
it's something that's going to be as strong moving forward when firms want to sell in multi-regions from that perspective as well. Now there's a lot of things that we've spoken about previously that you need to do in order to top up. BigCommerce want to take away some of those kind of hassles and make it really easy to kind of brands that are in multiple locations to be able to work that. So a lot of our roadmap is going into that at the moment, but then a lot of it is doubling down on the success that we've already had, in the sense of all of our platform is really well optimized. It's really well set up. We want to ensure and double down that it's completely set for the next 5-10 years from that side of things. So we're making a lot of advancements in there, and then not really touched on it all that much across this session, but making Composable a lot more attractive and achievable for brands across the board. I think for the listeners that don't quite know, Composable commerce is something that's really come to the forefront at the moment through ensuring that you've got a headless architecture in your platform. So decouple your backend and your front end. That was seen of something that only the Ted Bakers, the Legos, and the huge brands of the world could do that properly from a best of breed approach. We want to make that something that any brand who has the investment and wants to do it can do. So we're working very closely with a lot of our technology partners to be able to build something really exciting that I think will come to fruition publicly in the next couple of months or into the new year, which will be super cool. And I think it's giving the opportunity for people who have maybe heard about headless, feel like it might be a good thing for their business, want to go a bit more composable, but were scared and thinking about the cost element of it was going to be too much. We're looking to ensure that that is a lot more attractive for merchants as well. But
all exciting.
Feel like someone that's when an actor is talking about the plot for a movie and they're saying, I can't say much at the moment, but
yeah. No, I think that's quite generous of you. I think Sam sharing those two sort of key areas and key focuses. So I always like to end with a book recommendation. Do you have a book that you recommend to our listeners?
I do, yes. It's one of my favorite kind of sales, but kind of not, that I read start of last year, I think it was. It's called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And Chris Voss was a FBI negotiator for a number of years, the lead FBI negotiator. And in the book, he talks about the key elements of never split the difference. Life is always a negotiation, but I love it because he refers his experience back to everyday kind of conversations. That's the element of it I've really enjoyed. I've read it like twice now, stupidly for some reason. But that side of things, I think, is a great takeaway that you start using naturally without even trying the things that he's spoken about in that book in your everyday life. And you pick up, it's like, oh, of course. It's like the one he always uses is negotiating dinner time with his children and that kind of thing, which is always something that I think a lot of people will go back and go, oh, of course.
That is a great choice. It's one that we have bought several copies for team members over the last year or so.
Very fair.
And that are in certain positions of the business when it comes to negotiating certain things. So great choice. Would recommend that to everybody that's listening, because ultimately, if you're running a business, you're negotiating, or you should be, and getting a good deal on that negotiation. Well, thanks, Sam, for coming on the podcast. For those that want to find out and reach out to yourself directly and find out more about BigCommerce, what's the best way to do that?
Absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn, as I'm sure everyone else can. But if you want to drop me an email at sam.jackson@bigcommerce.com, always happy to have a chat and schedule a call and introduce you to other people within the business as well that are beneficial and support making everyone as successful as possible.
Brilliant. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Nice.
Cheers.
If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast. You're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you on the next one.